So a couple of announcements before we do the roll tonight. We do have an announcement about Commissioner Missy Stoltz has submitted her letter of resignation from the Transportation Commission. Missy accepted a position with the University of Washington in Seattle and will soon be moving across the country, so she won't be able to participate, continue her participation on the commission, unfortunately. But she sends her regrets about and thanks for the opportunity to participate, regrets that she won't be able to continue, and we thank Missy for the work that she has provided towards the efforts of this commission. Additionally, we have an announcement from Commissioner Preston. Stephanie will be completing her term with the Transportation Commission through the end of May, and there's a candidate that has been identified as a replacement that also represents A2 Safe Transport. So we hope to have an announcement about a new commissioner soon. And so that's it in terms of changes. Is there anything, Ms. Preston, that you wanted to add as far as, sorry to put you on the spot, but just with the announcement, anything that you wanted to add?
Oh, I really value this commission and the opportunity to help participate, and I probably would have re-upped, but I moved out of the Ann Arbor city limits. So that's that. I'm still in Ann Arbor Public Schools, so I'll still participate in the A2 Safe Transport as part of the efforts to make school safety a priority.
Thank you, Stephanie. So, in terms of the roll for tonight, I have received regrets from Councilmember Ackerman, Commissioner Stoltz, as we announced, Commissioner Guru Raja, Commissioner Margolis also is not able to join us tonight. So please say, for the remaining commissioners, please say here when your name is called. Commissioner Felt.
Here.
Commissioner Fern.
Here.
Commissioner Gordon.
Here.
Commissioner Hull.
Here.
Commissioner Nahidi.
Here.
Commissioner Preston.
Here.
Commissioner Parsons.
Here.
Commissioner Trudeau.
Here.
Commissioner Dolan. Commissioner Palumbo. Sergeant Bill Clock.
Here.
Commissioner Cooper.
Here.
Commissioner Lazarus.
Here.
Commissioner Liu.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? So I'll take a motion to approve the agenda from,
So moved.
okay, Commissioner Gordon,
Seconded.
Commissioner Trudeau, seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have an agenda. Okay. We have time for public commentary, and you have 3 minutes to speak. And if you'd like to speak, please sign in. You know that. Thanks for coming.
Good evening, my name is Clark Chernesky. A couple of things. One is in the last 2 or 3 months, I've had the opportunity to participate in the traffic calming procedure for Blewett, which is right near where I live. And I just want to say that that has been handled in a very professional manner by Kayla and her colleagues. Some people disagreed with some of the ground rules about how much influence people not living right on the street in question, maybe they should have more input and stuff. But it was handled in a very fair and judicious manner. One of the things that I saw on the agenda tonight had to do with North Main Street. And one thing that I had seen in the previous information about it was a proposal to remove the tracks that are under the pavement that connect the Ann Arbor Railroad with the railroad tracks owned by the state that Amtrak uses, North Main Street. Shortly before that was taken out of service, state spent a lot of money putting those in, digging deep down to get the quick base and so forth. So I would ask for some caution in removing those. Maybe they can continue to be paved over, because that's the only place in the area where the two railroads, you can get from one railroad to another. And as part of the commuter rail proposals, the idea was to perhaps move the equipment from maintenance up in Owasso down to the east-west railroad here. And that's the easiest way to do it. Otherwise, you have to do it at Wayne Junction, which is on the west side of Wayne, Michigan. Also, I would also like to put some word in for the need for a pedestrian bicycle tunnel to get under the tracks that Amtrak uses on North Main Street, to connect the north side of the river with North Main Street and West Main River Drive. People now carry their bikes over the tracks. That never gets fenced, they won't be able to do that. Plus, it's not something that could be done. Like endorse the pedestrian crossing at Washtenaw and Pittsfield so that people going from one side of the street to the other to get to the bus stops wouldn't have to cross 3 streets to cross one, as it is right now. So I hope that can move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak tonight? All right, the public commentary is closed. I must speak. Public commentary is closed. We have minutes to approve. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Then I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Parsons.
Okay. Seconded by Preston. All right. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we have, okay, you don't technically have to, but you can. Then we have minutes from last month. And now we have a presentation on the budget.
Commissioners, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some information with you and talk a little bit about process as well. Before I start, I do want to thank our speaker and respond to a couple things. The traffic calming process is difficult because it involves making modifications to neighborhoods, and while there's always an intent to be safe, the actual nuts and bolts can be difficult to get through. And I do appreciate the commendation for staff and the way they've handled it. That means a lot to staff, and I will share that. The other thing I'd want to share with you as well, since you came out on a not so dark and stormy night to share your thoughts, is that there are in fact 2 projects in different stages of development to provide pedestrian and bicycle access underneath the railroad tracks. One is the city's project, the Allen Creek berm opening project, which is moving forward, and we're in the process of getting easements. The other is an effort that the county is taking on, and they're in the process of raising private monies. So hopefully we'll see both of those occur within real time and not in planning time, or as I learned this afternoon, Michigan time. What I'd like to do tonight is talk a little bit about the budget and orient it towards transportation initiatives. In future years, I'd like to advance this discussion earlier so that the input that you provide can take shape and help shape the budget before I present it to council. So this is a little late in the process, but you never start a journey until you take the first steps. There's still opportunity for you to provide input, as well as for us through council to amend the budget if it's necessary. A couple things that are attached are the 2018 work plan, which the transportation staff has prepared, and it gives a very in-depth list of the projects that are scheduled. And I hope together we can hold all of ourselves accountable for meeting that. There's also a attachment that deals with school safety projects specifically, and Kayla has those loaded if you'd like to talk about those in depth later. But I encourage you to take a look at them and share any thoughts you have with me and with the city's transportation staff. So tonight I want to talk about the recommended budget, and this was presented to council on Monday at the city council meeting. And by charter, the city has to adopt the budget at its second meeting in May. What's important is that we work on a 2-year budget. This is the second year of that budget, so we're sticking to plan. What that does for us is it gives us the opportunity this year to really engage with council in a series of visioning exercises, which we started in January, starting with public safety. We talked about getting their vision for infrastructure. The next couple will deal with community affordability, and finally with parks, health, and integrating nature into our lifestyle. So it's good to do that this year. It puts the actual nuts and bolts of getting into the 2-year budget for FY20 into a non-election year, so we get freed from those distractions as well. With the FY20 and 21 budget, we are really going to dig into how we get work done, look for efficiencies, see how we can deliver and increase the accountability that the public can have, be more transparent. So I invite the commission into that year-long deep dive into how we're going to match our core services with our strategic plans and with the long-term vision for the city. The general fund next year is it's only going to increase by 1.62%. As we've talked about on separate occasions, we have a little bit of a structural imbalance in the budget. Our expenses generally go up around 2 to 2.5%. Most of that is staff and compensation driven, but we do expect to see some increases in property tax receipts. And what we don't know is what the impact on revenue will be from all the additional development that's going on. But we are required to submit a balanced budget. So in the end, we'll match both the service delivery and the available funds. There's a small decrease in the property tax rate this year, but because valuation increases, those things tend to balance each other out. What's new in the budget this year is a $2.2 million rebate from the county public safety and community mental health millage. Our council has made the allocations to include 20% to pedestrian safety, which should be of immediate and direct interest to this commission. Just one other thing to go back, just a reminder that of the taxes you pay, city gets less than a quarter out of every dollar. So the majority goes to education, which is a strong community value. Some of it goes to fund county programs, and then there's a small list of other recipients, including the library, AAATA, and other important members of our community. You can see of the $390 million, about $105 million of that is to the general fund, which is where we spend most of our time in the budget process. But most of the money goes to do other things. There's $93 million to the enterprise funds. There's $900,000 up there to the CIP, and then there's just other things that we use the tax dollars for. All of our fund balances remain within city policy goals. That means we have a greater than 15% unassigned balance. Our bond ratings are all at AA+, and the results of what we're doing will increase typical single-family homeowners' taxes by about $3.29 a month and about $5.61 in utility cost. Staff each year strives to keep the burden of increase as low as possible, which is also strong direction from City Council. Some new funding that's in the budget. We are going to put over $1 million into street light funding, both new street lights and maintaining the existing street lights. We are going to program $200,000 of that millage money towards the electronic speed signs on major roads, similar to what we put out by Huron High School. It's been well received, and as I've told council, we are going to continually look for grants and other sources of funds, but we are putting money aside for, I believe, 5 of those installations, and that's both public schools and private schools. And we are putting money aside to do an accessibility compliance study. The rest of the areas, public safety, affordable housing, climate and energy, resource management, are things that you can see listed in the amounts that are shown. Adding 2 police officer FTEs really realigns staffing functions that were ongoing with the police department and will enable us to put more officer effort on road patrol. But essentially, there's a police officer who was, a command officer who was assigned to FOIA reviews, particularly with videos, and that took an officer out of the patrol. And then also, as the police department moves towards its accreditation, they'll realign their training efforts. Both of those things will, though, ultimately help with getting more officers on the road. So what's new in the budget? There's some exciting things. We have $75,000 to plan for climate action. Council put 40% of the county millage that we get back towards climate action. The feeling is that you can't go from zero to $900,000 in 1 year without some financial whiplash. So we need to plan for that, and that's what the $75,000 is for. The reason we're getting the rebate, by the way, under the millage is we maintain our own police department. So part of the millage increase was for those departments that the county provides routine policing. And the concept is that it would be unfair for us to pay for that since we already support our own police department. So about 24% of the millage comes back to the city. I talked about the pedestrian safety for streetlights and electronic speed signs. That essentially amounts to the entire expenditure of the 20% council put towards pedestrian safety. Some items here on public safety. One thing I will point out, the $125,000 reduction in general fund support for fire inspections is a result of working with our large property owners, commercial property owners, on improving the types of inspections, the frequency of inspections, and putting in some better ways of managing the inspection performance. That is a net savings. Some early alignments and efficiencies in this year's budget. We are moving the park staff to parks and taking it out of public services. I'm a big believer in vertical of responsibility and accountability. This puts the responsibility of maintaining the parks assets in the parks department totally. There's no additional cost or FTEs to do it. It's just improved command and control. We are moving and consolidating assets dealing with sustainability and innovation into one place as well. We developed some smart performance measures, throwing almost $1 million into a program that has been scratching for resources does require that we look at accountability and performance measures for that. Again, we're not going to increase staffing over the long term. We are going to take a very good look at how we deliver solid waste and recycling services as part of that realignment. One thing that was of interest to you, we are going to consolidate our transportation resources under Mr. Hutchinson. He's hiring a transportation manager to work for him. That individual will have some expertise in active transportation, transit, and mobility systems. So it will help us move to worrying about just moving cars around to moving people around in a safe way and get us further to the goal of being a walkable, bikeable city, as well as one that manages its roadways efficiently. No additional FTEs from the FY18 budget, but I think you'll see an improvement in addressing the kind of things that this commission has weighed in on. And then on the strategic planning side, we are, as I said, we're going to dive deeply into our core services and see how we can improve them, measure them, and be more efficient. Every budget comes with risk and uncertainty, and you can see the ones that are listed up there. But we don't really know, rather than look at the risks. There are some interesting uncertainties. We don't know yet what revenues will come from licensing of medical or recreational marijuana facilities. So it's not counted in the budget. If you've been watching the proceedings from City Hall, you know we have about 30 applications in process. So at the minimum, if they all make it through the wickets, that's 30 times $5,000 each, so it's $150,000. Plus, there's a share of the taxation on that, and we don't know what that'll be. So there is some money there. We don't know where it's going to go. Nor do we know what will happen as new units are delivered throughout the city. So we don't count the revenues until we have a year's experience, but we know that it's coming in. We are looking at adjusting parking meter hours and fines. The fines are pretty, I think, straightforward. The parking agreement we have with the DDA requires us to adjust parking fines when they adjust rates. And I don't think there's a lot of negative pushback on that. The hours of enforcement downtown is an area that will require, and we will actively support, large-scale community engagement. We know that the merchants have concerns about it, but parking assets are important to the city. Managing them correctly, making sure that we promote turnover as well as generating the revenues to support continued maintenance is important. We don't know, going down to the next bullet right now, where the definite funding is for design and construction of the Ann Arbor Station, the tree line trail, and then we have some improvements on Barton Dam, which we absolutely have to fund. So part of the uncertainty in this year's budget is where is that funding going to come from? We're going to have to change our approach. We're going to have to look at partnerships and go after OPM or other people's money to get there. But looking for partnerships also means you have to reevaluate the extent of control you have as well. Talked a little bit about solid waste before, and then we are approaching a asset maintenance approach to our assets. We do have and have introduced the condition of our roadways and bridges, which you should have seen, and they are far from being where we want to be. The goal is to get to 80% of our roads in good or better condition, and we will work towards that as well. This is just an overview of the budget process, and I have a personal ownership of this slide since I put it together. So for no other reason, it's here just to validate the effort that went into it. But you can see we're in the March-April timeframe. We are getting community input. And as we look at next year's cycle, the 2021, we'll advance things like this discussion so we can get the input before the budget is introduced to council. Some specific transportation funding, kind of getting into things of more direct interest to the commission. It's pretty remarkable. We're going to have a expenditure of $22 million on transportation-related matters this year, particularly on the roadways to address the condition. But you can see there's $2.25 million in sidewalks. We're putting money into light replacement, as I talked before, and the electronic speed control signs. Some initiatives, the tree line, the master plan is completed. We're working with various partners to try and figure out a business plan and execution plan, and hopefully we'll be able to bring that back to this commission and council over the coming months. I talked about the station and the asset management. We're also looking at mobility operating systems. In other words, how do we use technology to help us get around and coordinate our lives? We are working with the county on a One Community and Vital Seniors initiative, try and use those systems to benefit the most impacted, most vulnerable parts of our community. And we are looking with our partners from Ford and Deloitte at participation in a World Economic Forum demonstration of this seamless integration. A lot of words for saying we're going to try and get the things that we're doing as initiatives highlighted more and ultimately tap into the expertise that exists, not just nationwide, but worldwide. And this coming summer is the time we update the citizen survey or the resident survey. So that'll be done, and we'll be able to align the questions we ask with the strategic goals of the city. Some near-term issues. Again, we are looking at a police commission. That'll take up staff time and energy. It's probably one of the most significant things we can do to connect our police department with the community that it serves. In general, whether it's in public safety, transportation, we do want to look at how we use data to make better decisions. And on the bottom, we have about 40% of the city staff that'll turn over in the coming years. It's a big concern. And then, as I said before, how do we adapt to changes in the means and methods of service delivery? Some of the over-the-horizon issues, things that are beyond our 5-year planning horizon. How do we manage the public right-of-way? We may want cars to move at 25 miles an hour, but we also know that information is moving through our right-of-way at a much faster rate, and we need to be aware that that is a use of the public right-of-way that we're going to have to respond to and try and anticipate as well. Autonomous vehicles, whether we like it or not, are coming at us, and we need to also build an infrastructure that can accommodate them, and also make sure that people on foot and people on bikes can get around safely as well. Transportation plays a big role in development, and what types and locations of businesses are we going to have, and how does housing density affect how we get around? And then the university is making some changes, and the university, whenever they do that, it obviously impacts what we do in our quality of life. They are developing and reimagining North Campus, and we have a seat at the table with them. And they're restructuring the hospital complex and how they deliver outpatient services. Essentially, they're going to take the downtown hospital and be more focused on inpatient care and move some of their clinics to the areas around the city. That means that we may have less traffic coming in from a patient load to the hospital, but it may also change the staff and visitors that come in as well. So those are things that impact the infrastructure, and the relationship with U of M is strong, and we're working collaboratively on those matters as well. So with that, kind of curious as to what's on your minds and what you're thinking as we look to budget, not just in the coming year, but in the year after that, when we really dig deep into the budget. There are no questions. You can always email and send them in to the city staff. The points of contact are listed on the city's website under the budget page. So if you can't think of anything right now, please share it with us, and we will work on those. So I appreciate the time.
I do have one question,
Yes, ma'am.
which is just the perspective of how things have changed over the last couple of years, particularly with the transportation money. And so it looks like there's a lot of money going into sidewalks and signals and that kind of thing, but I don't have the perspective of what it was before.
Okay, I think I can provide that.
Okay.
I don't have it here right now.
You
I
know,
can
you
provide
don't
it.
have it memorized.
Well, I'll share a personal
Okay.
perspective. It may be more money than we spent in the past, but I'm not sure that. Where my thinking is we need to look at reconstruction of roadways to accommodate all users. And so the separation of money for alternate transportation, non-motorized, shouldn't be separated from the plan of reconstructing roadways. We had a great capital improvements meeting with the DDA this afternoon to extend their focus on people-friendly streets into the surrounding neighborhoods. And my hope is, as we look at projects on First and Ashley and the areas around the downtown, that the methods we introduce to slow down traffic and to treat neighborhood streets differently than other streets will quickly be embraced by other neighborhoods, and we can really start to address how people travel through the city, both on our arterials and on our neighborhood streets. Again, thank you very much. You know, the virtual door is always open for us to have the conversations about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And as we get into next year's budgeting process, I really will try and seek out your input. What you've done in the first year of existence as a commission has been important and has produced results, and I'm optimistic about how we amplify that in future years.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So there has been a draft resolution offered to support this budget, and we have the option of accepting that as is or modifying it, or we don't have to vote on it also, but that was the request from Commissioner Lazarus.
Thank you.
Any comments or ideas about that? Would you like to move forward in adopting this resolution?
Yes.
Okay, that's one person. Okay, so would you like to actually move it the way that it is? The way that was in your packet, but,
Yes, I would move that we adopt the draft resolution as written.
okay. And you've seconded that? Great. Any discussion about this resolution? Yeah,
Maybe just a minor point, not that we should necessarily change the language, but one of the whereases is includes funding to support projects and programs that will benefit multimodal transportation. That's not easy to see in the materials that we're looking at. I know it's built in and embedded, but it might be nice to break that out more in the future for us.
any other comments? Budgeting is always so exciting.
Well, you know, there are two people who are deaf in public speaking. They're accountants and engineers, and you had the opportunity to combine both of those in a single presentation this evening.
And I found it helpful. Well, we can go ahead and vote then, if you're ready. So in the matter of this resolution, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, then we have a resolution of support. Thank you. And the next item on our agenda is the Watts Overview and North Main Street project.
All right, good evening. I'm Ryan Buck. I'm the director of the Washtenaw Area Transportation Study. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about our agency in general, what we do, how we're involved with the city, talk about our long-range planning effort that's currently underway, and just a brief introduction to MDOT's proposed project on North Main. As it gets started, I'm curious how many people are on the commission are familiar with Watts, at least vaguely? Excellent. How many of you would like to explain to me exactly what Watts does?
No.
So that's really why I'm here a little bit. So we're a small agency. We're a 4-person staff. We have a technical committee and a policy committee. Our technical committee is comprised of engineers and planners from our member agencies. Our policy committee is elected and appointed officials. We're required to exist because of the Ann Arbor urbanized area. So we're a federally required agency. The federal government will take funding, transportation funding, and plop it down to urban and rural areas and say, you all have to figure out how you're going to spend it. Figure out amongst yourselves. We're not going to dictate who gets the money between the two of you. And so there's a continuing, comprehensive, and cooperative process that has to go on to decide how these federal transportation funds are spent. And Watts is the agency that facilitates that process in Washtenaw County. So not every jurisdiction in the county is a member of Watts, but many are. All of the cities, most of the villages, urban townships, rural townships, the Ann Arbor DDA, Eastern Michigan University, and U of M all participate actively on our technical and policy committees. I've provided links to a few of our key products, and I hope you, if you haven't had a chance to do your homework before this meeting, I do encourage you to go to our website and view some of these products. The first one I mentioned is our annual report. The federal government requires us to provide a list of projects that received funding in any given year, which is interesting, but sort of turned into just a check-the-box list for agencies like ours. They would just list the projects and send it out. We wanted to make it a little more appropriate for, or friendly to the public, provide a little more information, so we provide a full update on our year's progress, what we've accomplished as an agency, as well as the projects that we've coordinated and helped provide funding to. The Transportation Improvement Program is the 4-year list of funded improvements. So once a project makes it into the Transportation Improvement Program, it's eligible for obligation, and so it can begin to receive funds. But before a project can enter the Transportation Improvement Program, it has to be included in the long-range plan. That is the visionary document that also includes projects all the way out to the year currently 2040, but as part of our long-range plan development, current development, that will extend to 2045. So those are sort of the documents and products that focus on projects, but there's another number of other interesting things you can see on our website. A crash report, traffic counts, all sorts of data. So I'd encourage you to peruse the website. So the 2045 long-range plan, the process for this, it's cyclical. You know, we started immediately after we adopted an update to the 2040 long-range plan. We started right headfirst in the 2045 plan, and that happened just under a year ago. And the first thing we started with was identification of goals. And this is common in the planning process. And 6 of our 7 goals are things that you've probably seen before or would expect as part of a transportation plan, and I'll get to them later. We did an inventory of existing conditions and identified deficiencies. Take all this information, we can package it together to our local agencies, for them to develop projects along with revenue estimates. We then score the projects based on the rubric that was included in your packet. Then there's a prioritization process to make sure that the funding can be spent in each year. Then projects are implemented, but throughout this entire process, we try to engage the public as much as we can and monitor the system, of the condition of the system. So our goals, these first 6 are what you would, invest strategically. Of course, that's going to be a goal of an agency that's responsible for providing transportation funding, access and mobility, safety, all the things that you would expect, and all the things that we've included in our long-range plans for at least the last 15 years, and I assume for the 10 years before that. But the new one is equity. That's our 7th goal. And this really came on the heels of the work that the county has initiated, the County Office of Community and Economic Development, as a result of their, I think it was 2014 household affordability study that looked at some of the discrepancies between the eastern portion of the county and Ann Arbor. And they developed an opportunity index as a result of that. And if you have not had a chance to review the opportunity index, I definitely encourage you to go to that as well. I believe the website is opportunitywashtenaw.org. But that takes a deeper dive looking at the current conditions as a result of sort of underinvestment in certain areas of the community. And so we really want to take a leadership role in making sure that when we're deciding on transportation investments, that we're making equitable investments. So the goals are the first step. Following that, we break it down into performance measures. You might have heard something about transportation federal performance measures. I'm not really going to talk about those tonight. Those are much more focused for the state and implemented by the state with the support of regions like Watts and SEMCOG. And I should mention, before I go any farther, we have a very close working relationship with SEMCOG. And I know that they presented here previously on their long-range planning efforts. And so these efforts really are one and the same. But because we have an agency like Watts, we're able to put our own local flair, make sure that the values of this community, not just Southeast Michigan, are reflected in that. So when you take those 7 goals, we then break it down further into the performance measures. I think there's about 28 different performance measures. And this provides the basis for our performance management process and our data dashboard. And we've tried to contextualize these performance measures in fact sheets. And there's one here that's showing up that unfortunately doesn't have the nice graphic that goes along with it. The idea is so you take a performance measure and then say why it has become an issue, what the baseline information is, what our target is, and how we hope to be there. So we're developing these currently for our existing plan, our 2040 plan, and they'll be updated as part of the development of the 2045 plan, and will really be the basis for that plan. So after we've established the goals, the performance measures that we're going to be looking at, we look at system deficiencies. There's a lot of maps here. I'm going to go through them relatively quickly. The first one is pavement. So for the since 2004, Watts has participated in the asset management process that is occurring statewide. So a staff person from Watts, someone from the Road Commission, and someone from MDOT get in a vehicle, and we drive every mile of federally eligible road in Washtenaw County. There's about 1,000 miles. And we give it a sort of windshield evaluation from 1 to 10. 1 being something that's nearly impassable. You've probably all seen ones. 10 being new construction. Fortunately, we've seen some of that as well. And so we've built a large database that shows the decline in the system that we all knew was happening as a result of the underinvestment in many levels, from the federal level all the way down. So that continues to happen, but there has been a little bit of sort of bounce that we've seen as a result of some of the newer funding initiatives. So there is the slight increase from the state gas tax. There is the countywide transportation millage. And before the 4-year millage, the annual millages that were passed. Those provide a little bit of a cushion as we sort of enter the lower quality system. But funding is an issue. And that is an issue with federal funding as well. We just approved our new non-motorized plan today at our afternoon policy committee meeting. That was the first time we've had a non-motorized plan update since 2006. But in terms of identifying deficiencies in the urban areas, we looked at all those federal aid eligible roads and say, okay, we need to be providing safe access for pedestrians and bicyclists on every side of every road. And so this is sort of just the first cut. This is where we see a deficiency. That doesn't mean that every one of these has a project that goes along with it, but this is the type of information that we're sending along to our member agencies to make sure they're aware of the issues. I did something similar with bicycles as well. Again, every one of these roads, we're thinking in a complete streets mindset. Every road needs to have safe access along it and across it. When it comes to transit, we partner with both the RIDE and the rural providers in the county. We identify the fixed route coverage area, door-to-door service areas. Also, we look at bus stops and the infrastructure that's around them, whether or not they have shelters or a bench. We actually, in many ways, we act as the sort of GIS arm of the RIDE, and also the fleet replacement schedule. Buses have a useful life, and so we have an idea of when those buses are going to be replaced, how frequently they'll need to be replaced, and how much it'll cost to do that. Congestion is something that has changed a lot in the last, I've been with the agency 15 years, and it's changed completely, how we looked at it then to how we look at it now. We have relied heavily in the past on our travel demand model to help us identify and project congestion issues. And going back to early modeling days in the 50s and 60s, these could be very effective sort of models because it can help us analyze major changes in the system. So if we're going to build a highway here or a highway here, it's a good model for that. But for the most part, most of our projects in both the TIP and the long-range plan are maintenance. There's not a lot of huge projects. And that's one thing that we want to change and think about what's the best use of federal funds. Should we be using these to help bridge the funding gap for maintenance, or should we be using them on transformative projects? That's a question for this body to be thinking about. But here's an example of what the federal government is now calling congested roadways. So on arterial roads, if the average speed is less than or equal to 20 miles an hour for any hour on average. And so I think in many ways, the values in this community say that this isn't necessarily a bad thing. We want to focus on people, not moving cars as quickly and as far as we can, as fast as we can. And so we are interested in things like reliability, though. If a trip is going to take 20 minutes because it's congested, we're interested in if there's another crash, if it's going to take you 35 minutes. What's the difference between free flow time and congestion time, or when there's an incident or two incidents? And how can we sort of narrow that gap? So we don't fix congestion by widening roads. We look at just ways to manage it. The way that we identified safety deficiencies mirrored what SEMCOG did as part of their safety plan. They grouped like segments of roadway based on things like number of lanes, vehicle flows, and look at the highest 5% of intersections and segments. And so we do that for pedestrians, also for automobile crashes. We have rear end crashes, lane departure crashes, getting an idea where there's a higher than average rate on some of these segments, and for bicycles as well. For bridges, we identified two issues with the bridges across the county. One is referring to them as structurally deficient, which is, you might expect, issues with the integrity of the bridge. Doesn't mean, just because a bridge is structurally deficient, does not mean that it's about to fall over. It's just a condition. It's based on the rating as part of the National Bridge Inventory. And so a lot of the times you'll hear some of these national statistics that talk about the tens of thousands of bridges that are about to fall over. That's not necessarily true, but it doesn't mean that it's an asset that has been neglected. It does mean that the asset has been neglected. The other thing that we look at it for bridges is functionally obsolete, and that could mean that it's no longer standard for height clearance. It doesn't have adequate width to allow for the safe passage of all users. And so I mentioned that we engage the public as much as we can throughout this process, and not just the long-range plan, but in everything that we do. But we do find challenges in doing that because we're trying to engage people in this sort of visioning exercise. How do we want our community to look in the future? But we're not talking about we're going to do this project, and it's affecting you directly, what do you think? And so we struggle, but we've developed a new public participation plan that was approved last year. As part of it, a new public participation philosophy. Here I've listed just a few of the ways that we're trying to engage the public as part of the 2045 long-range planning effort. Traditional public meetings, of course, but also pop-up meetings. So we'll walk into coffee houses, we'll just walk down the street and try to stop people. We piggyback on a lot of other meetings. You take this as an example, but also the Mayor's Green Fair, something that we've participated in since its inception. Social media, of course, but even old-fashioned newspaper ads. We found a newspaper and listed an ad for one of our long-range plan meetings. And so we've gone through several rounds of meetings, and as part of the most recent round, one of the things that we wanted to do was say, this is what we've heard so far. So we want this process to be a bit of a cycle. You tell us what you think, we'll tell you what we're hearing you say, and then we can use that as we create a list of funded improvements for the future. And so what we've put here is sort of what we hear are the values of the community. And so when I say community here, in terms of this slide, that's Washtenaw County. And so we have a diverse group of stakeholders. We have, of course, the city of Ann Arbor, but also rural townships. And so it can be a struggle to identify community values when the values can be so different between the different members. But there are the things that you would sort of hope to see here in terms of congestion. We're not talking about widening highways. We're talking about providing safe alternatives and increasing transit services. Non-motorized safety, improving the system of the pavement condition. Traffic calming in terms of safety, increasing overall transit. And then I also have a pie chart here that shows comments by topic. This was taken from SEMCOG's MetroQuest survey, which I believe they talked about when they were here. So all of the comments within Washtenaw County that came from residents of Washtenaw County were grouped here by topic. And so congestion and walking and biking were the ones that were most frequently commented on by Washtenaw County residents. So we've gone through this process now, identifying goals, how we're going to measure the performance of the system long term, what the issues are with the system. We take then the financial forecasts and provide them to our local agencies so they can submit projects to us. So the call for projects for the 2020 through 2023 Transportation Improvement Program and the 2045 Long Range Plan both ended last week. So the next step that we're going to do is take it through the scoring rubric that was included in the packet, draft a preliminary program that will be reviewed by our federal aid committee, and that's a committee that's made up by representatives that are eligible to receive federal aid, so including the city of Ann Arbor. That draft program will be sent to our technical and policy committee. They'll review it and decide whether or not they want to approve it, or if they want to send it back to the federal aid committee and the public with some policy directives. So this could be something like, we'd like to see an increased investment in non-motorized, or we'd like to see more investment going towards transit capital purchases. Really, any of those sort of policy directions are what we're looking for feedback from our elected officials. Once they approve it, though, it'll be incorporated with the regional long-range plan and then forwarded on for approval at MDOT and Federal Highway Administration. So I think for this group, the next steps that are going to be important for you are to wait till we have that preliminary list of projects, review them, make sure that the projects that you'd like to see are included. If they're not, have a conversation with city staff and council. And also a broader consideration for how you'd like to see federal funds being spent. That's what we deal with, federal funds. As a city, there's a question of how can we spend funds that reflect the values of the city of Ann Arbor. We have direct allocation of about $5 million a year in urban funds. There are several $1 million of other funds that we have at least a controlling interest in deciding. And so if you look at the city, there's a large stakeholder in Washtenaw County, and so there's a significant portion that usually goes to the city. And so I think it's important to have a discussion about what those funds should be used for. So that's all I have for the long-range plan, and I guess if it's okay with Kale and the commission, I'll just do one more brief slide on the North Main project, and then we can talk about if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So think everyone has heard about the proposed project now. It is scheduled for 2022. It's included in MDOT's 5-year plan, and it is North Main from Huron north to M14. So that's the section of Main Street that's owned by the state. It's got an $11.3 million budget, and MDOT has clarified that the scope is very clearly just from curb to curb, so that they're not exactly sure where it will end, but there will be some pavement rehab, some pavement reconstruction, but it will just be in that curb to curb area. We did set up, Watts convened a group of stakeholders on April 9th that was very similar to the North Main Task Force to discuss the project with MDOT and figure out next steps, because while 2022 may sound like a long ways away, we actually, in planning terms, we really got to get the ball rolling right now. What was exciting is that MDOT is very willing to consider the types of strategies that were outlined as part of the North Main Task Force study, and that was also included right here on the link. But when it comes to things outside of the curb to curb, it's something that the city is going to have to identify resources for. And when it comes to operational changes within the roadway, that's something that MDOT's going to need to see a strong backing from council and a group like this. MDOT is very concerned about managing expectations, and they're very concerned about any impact on their operations. But one thing that's, I think, changed over the last 5 or 6 years is if there's strong community support for a project that will degrade car operations to promote a space for people, that they're willing to consider that. And so I think we've come a long way with MDOT, and I appreciate their work toward that end. But the city has to identify the resources. There's millions of dollars that need, we have a vision. We have the North Main Task Force. As part of this group that we pulled together, the values remain the same. The vision largely remains the same, but we still need to identify the resources to do that. Also, just getting a little bit into the minutia, MDOT will require the city to provide some funding to do modeling. So while they're interested in what the city thinks in terms of operations and changes that could occur, they're not going to study it themselves. They say, listen, you fund it, you study it, when you make a decision, talk to us, and then we'll think about it. Fortunately, in this case, since there's an active project in the area, they've already created the model, and so it doesn't look like it's going to be too much of a financial burden, and I think there's already been some discussions at the staff level at how we'll be able to use existing resources. But that's sort of how MDOT has been looking at it. They say, we'll entertain anything that interests you, as long as you pay for the study and you have our backs if there's any fallout from the community. And that is all I have.
Thank you. We have time for questions and comments.
So your money all comes from what we think of as the Federal Highway Trust Fund?
Yes.
It's the 18 point whatever cents per gallon.
I'm curious, I was curious how to get potentially more involved, or just to get more information about how the process with North Main is going to go. I am personally very interested in that, as I live right on North Main. So I see what's happening on the street there, and I have a lot of questions and ideas, and some of the things are in some of the North Main study, but I'm very invested in where the direction of some of those things go, and I'd like to advocate for certain kinds of changes, including operational changes. So I don't know what the process is for that.
So,
but, yeah.
For the group that met on April 9th, sort of what we decided was the next time we were going to meet was in the summer after MDOT brought on a design consultant.
Okay.
So that's when they think the next sort of logical point is to begin sort of stakeholder and community feedback. And at that point, I think it's a good, we could invite the members of the Transportation Commission to a meeting like that, obviously our stakeholder, and then talk about how we want to more broadly engage the community. So I'm excited about this process. Watts was not directly involved with the North Main Task Force study itself, and I think we're looking to take more of a leadership role this time in convening people. So I think stay tuned for now, but in the summer is when we're going to really be getting people together again. I think that'll be a good time to start for participation.
Yeah, that's good to know, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it and looking for that and talking to my neighbors to make sure people have a chance. Yeah.
Is, to the best of your knowledge and experience, is MDOT's narrow interpretation of what they're going to fund consistent with what they've done in other areas of the state?
Yes. Not in all cases, but generally, yes.
What are some of the exceptions?
I don't want, I say that because I don't want to say that that is how MDOT always handles it. But in my experience, this is how they have been treating them, yes.
Eli?
So I'd like to follow that question with another question related to MDOT's responsibility under the Michigan Complete Streets Law and their emphasis on curb-to-curb pavement, where the consideration of a complete street and mobility for all, how is that reconciled?
I completely agree with you, and I can't reconcile it in my mind. They've identified it as the scope of the project, and they are limited by the scope of the project. I don't agree with how they're going about it.
So, is the city considering creating sidewalk all the way in that stretch to M14?
I wouldn't want to speak for the city, but there's an interest in providing safe access for pedestrians and bicyclists all along that corridor, yeah.
Can you just inform us how it's decided what things you take care of versus city takes care of?
In this case, well, so outside of the roadway, MDOT will view that as sort of not their responsibility. They view their responsibility as a roadway.
I just
and
mean
so-
in really general terms. Like the maps you provided didn't just show issues or things on MDOT roads. Some of them included like downtown roads. So does your organization fund projects anywhere in the city, and then how do you
Oh,
decide if the city pays for it or you do?
oh, absolutely. So we would provide funding to the city. So as part of our call for projects, the city submits projects, we go through the prioritization process. So many of the projects in the city's CIP are eligible for the federal funds. And so it's largely a question of which projects the city submits to Watts for federal funds.
I see.
And so it could be pavement rehabilitation, it could be sidewalks, it could be non-motorized crossing signals, the RFBs, which I don't know if everyone is, are you familiar with the RFB issue? And are you familiar that the Federal Highway Administration has then pulled so it's not eligible again, but then MDOT still has further work to do before we can actually install them again?
There was information in the staff
Okay.
update report this month that the commissioners received about
Okay.
that.
So
Brad?
I'll just really quick echo my frustrations with MDOT and North Main, but that's not what I want to ask you about now. Two things. One, and maybe just a quick answer about goals, and then we can talk about something more specific. I noticed these are very realistic goals, I would say, not terribly aspirational. Is there a grounding to Watts, similar to like a Vision Zero sort of emphasis? And the reason I ask, the number of serious non-motorized crashes going down by 1.8, it doesn't have the sort of bite
Yeah.
that I would hope.
That's a great point. And that's actually sort of relates more to the federal performance measures. And the federal performance measures are absolutely not aspirational. They really can't be. And it's really more of a trend analysis.
Okay.
And so we've tried to identify a different way of going about that. I think that as part of this long-range plan effort, that you will see Watts adopt Vision Zero. We don't have that yet, though.
And then just a more maybe fun discussion, Ryan. It sounds like Watts you are faced with the reality of Highway 23 dividing Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, particularly for non-motorized, both pedestrian and bicycles. What realistically would it take, say, to get Packard a low-stress bicycle facility from city to city? Like what? Are we talking decades? Are we talking longer than that? Are we talking?
I think it's an issue of priority. If you're talking about Packard, what goes under 23?
Yeah.
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 I think it's an issue of priority in different areas, whether it's the road commissioner or the city. I think the road commissioner has come a long way in the way that they've developed their complete streets. It's just, we can do almost anything we want. It just has to be the priority. And, that's the thing that we deal with. We're dealing with, like I said, $5 million a year trying to make transformative impacts. We're trying to solve equity issues with $5 million a year. That's another one of the issues that we've had with our target making. Yeah, I mean, we want to spend everything that we can to reduce the number of pedestrian fatalities, but we're limited by budget and priority. And so we've tried to identify the segments where we think are most likely. The safety funding is largely reactive, unfortunately. So, if there's a dollar, there's a way.
And any recommendations for folks like us, how to push those priorities? Who?
Attend Watts meetings,
Okay.
mention it, talk to your city council rep, and talk to the city's rep to Watts, who currently is Chuck Warpahowski.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thinking of this corridor, not just in the future as a thoroughfare, but also to be more friendly to properties fronting the segment, anticipating that's going to spur some growth to the land use near this corridor. Are you going to engage or make similar presentation to other commissions at the city?
We certainly can. We're welcome to, and I think MDOT would be open to those discussions as well, certainly. But I think it's a good example of this question that the city's sort of been asked, and I think as residents, we've sort of answered. We want to, at least what I hear, is that we want to prioritize people, not cars. And so we've been very reactive and worried about the way that vehicles operate. And so the question for the city now is that what we care about? And we don't want to burden people, but like I said, I think the importance is in terms of reliability, not in terms of trying to get people from point A to point B as fast as we can in a car.
So we might refer you to one of our latest products, which is the Speed Reduction Committee has a report out, which is available on Legistar, or we can give you a link, where it's a fairly detailed analysis and some pretty cool ideas about how to address that issue. You might find that helpful, that we can share with you.
Thank you.
I can provide that link to Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have transportation updates.
Good evening. Not used to so much time, but I'll try not to fill the time.
Yes,
so don't-
please.
Don't worry. But maybe to take off from a question I think it was Commissioner Preston asked, in the report, just a couple of projects where we're utilizing the federal funding. As you read the monthly reports, look for terms like MDOT bidding or federal transportation. I noted on 7th Street, Federal Surface Transportation Program funds. Those are the sorts of projects that Ryan's referring to, that where the city is utilizing those federal dollars for projects that we're actually constructing. So quick off the top of my head, Pauline Boulevard is one. I believe Scioto Church is another, as well as 7th. So that's where those dollars are actually being utilized through the process that Ryan was presenting on tonight. In terms of the update, as my usual, in terms of particularly highlighting changes from last month's report, doesn't feel like it, but it is spring officially, and some construction has started, so the orange barrels are out, and some projects are getting ready to start. So in the construction section, noted Pauline as a state project. Bids have come in on that, and so that will be starting up here in May. Scioto Church is still moving along. The last report, it was anticipated a June start for that one, so that one has been nudged back a little bit through some easement work that had to be acquired for some sidewalk work. Fifth Avenue, if anyone came from the north end to City Hall, you know that project has definitely begun, but will be very transformative, but taking place throughout the season. So expect a lot of construction there for a while. The 7th Street Improvements Project,
that those plans were submitted to MDOT for bidding. So again, just for added detail, when we use those federal dollars for these projects, we're required to bid them through MDOT. They actually technically bid them and contract them, but then a separate contract is established between MDOT and the city to manage them. So it'll be city staff involved and/or contractors we hire directly, but technically speaking, we call them also MDOT projects. So that can get kind of, adds to the confusion sometimes, but that's what that's referring to. As Mr. Lazarus mentioned, the Allen Creek berm opening, very transformative project, but we've also been reporting on that, and easements, again, is an item that comes up on some of these projects, so that has nudged things back a little bit on that. We were anticipating and hoping for potentially June, August construction, but looks like that's getting moved back a bit, but we'll keep folks up to date on that. Then another item on the bottom of page 2 of the report that certainly of interest to the commission, the RFB installations. I gave the verbal, literally hot off the press, if you recall, last meeting where we had just learned about the FHWA change, so this adds the detail to that. But to boil it down very briefly, and then to kind of tie into even Ryan's presentation, FHWA and their rules trickle down the level to the state, and that's the next state level to work through MDOT in our case to then get approval for the local agencies. We went ahead basically immediately once we heard about the FHWA changing their position and have basically sent a letter to them petitioning, asking for that direct approval so that we can don't have to basically wait on the trickle-down effect. So that is in process, and we're waiting for a response from FHWA to officially approve our ongoing installation of the RFBs in the city. And once we get that, we'll certainly continue doing what we've been doing. Under projects in design and planning, some things to highlight. The Nixon Road Corridor project, I'm going to draw your attention to that the design is underway and engagement is going to be starting on that. So things will be coming to the commission on that soon. You'll be hearing more about that in the coming months. And the Fuller Sidewalk extension, when Ms. Redinger came and spoke with her very hoarse voice, I think that was last meeting, about the safety grants we got, that was one of the projects, so that was actually an added section here with some details. So that's a brand new one for you folks to take into account, and there'll, again, be some more detail information coming to you folks in the May meeting is what we're anticipating at this point. The people-friendly streets, again, Mr. Lazarus mentioned that with the DDA. Just wanted to point out and that the DDA had their engagement week about a month ago. It was kind of lined up with our commission meeting and folks were informed. Just wanted to note, because it was very impressive to me too, doing this, over 130 people attended and participated in those various workshops. So a lot of good feedback was provided and is being taken into account for those projects. Then just the other updates and information toward the back. Actually, turn over quickly to Sergeant Clark on the driver behavior study. I've been highlighting that there's still some budget left and looking to do another round of enforcement and communications, but he has a specific update even more than what's here in the report.
Well, we finally got around to scheduling. Due to some staffing issues and schedules and that, we finally sat down, Officer Adkins and I. We're in a training session last couple of days, so we figured out some dates. We're going to start May 29th. We'll do the 31st and then June 1st, and then continue all 5 days the following week, June 4th through 8th. We're going to use the same locations we did before, and then it'll be 2 hours of active enforcement 2 times a day. The reason we're only doing 3 days in the first week there is because of the holidays, and that costs more for staffing.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. And to the back page of the report, just actually, our speaker tonight mentioned the Blewett traffic calming, so I'd just like to highlight that and that process has gone through, and that is, I'm quite sure, the largest stretch of traffic calming, most folks involved. So maybe if Kayla's got any added details she'd like to provide on that one.
So it is the largest stretch, certainly, that we have ever taken on in one traffic calming project area. So the Blewett neighborhood has completed their on-site public meetings. Thank you, Clark, for speaking during public comment and sharing your feedback on the process. That's really helpful for staff to hear. We appreciate your participation at each of the public meetings and sharing your feedback throughout the process. So we are now at the point of the final survey card being mailed out to the project area to determine whether or not there is sufficient support for that to move forward to construction. So typical with almost every traffic calming project area that we work with, we find that there are some members of the community that greatly support traffic calming and some that are greatly opposed to it. So we, true to form, experienced that with Blewett, and we'll wait and see where their results come in, but we've tried to develop a concept plan that reflects the interests from those that have participated in the engagement process so far.
And then lastly, for my updates, to highlight the transportation plan update. Eli's been taking the lead on that, put together the scope and the RFP, which is now out on the street, but I'll ask Eli if he wants to add any more detail to that.
Thank you, Kristen. The RFP for the city transportation plan update is scheduled for the proposals to be in May the 4th. We did have our pre-proposal meeting earlier this week, and we had 8 interested proposers or representatives from firms sit with us, and we had general conversation, questions that they had about what is in the RFP itself. There was a deadline for written questions. We did receive 3 sets of written questions from potential bidders, and responses to those questions will be published early next week, as outlined in the RFP. Just a quick highlight at the highest level, which I think will be good for the commission to be aware. First and foremost, that the subtitle, if I would, for this exercise, and the emphasis is a Vision Zero plan. So historically, our transportation planning focused on access and mobility. At this point, safety is the preeminent focus of the document. As I presented at a meeting to the commission, we have continued with the expectation that this document will integrate both motorized and non-motorized transportation. So as we're sitting here around the table now, we have a separate non-motorized plan and a city transportation plan. They're going to be brought together under one umbrella in this. I think it's important to note that we are anticipating that this work will get underway yet this summer, and that a transportation plan update process would take about 12 months. And since the transportation plan is a part of the city's master plan, there is the Michigan statutory master plan approval process. So we're looking at likely a 2019 date for adoption, which will be a decade after the last plan had been adopted. So we're about on schedule as plan updates go at a municipal level. Unlike Watts, that's regularly in a plan update process, we do both planning and project implementation. So this is a significant event, and we look forward to working with the commission and with the community as we undertake this planning exercise in the months ahead. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Eli. And so with that, if there's questions folks have for me or anything to take back to other staff.
So, Crescent, it seems like I have to say something every time you're up.
Sure. Yeah, no.
I noticed that not on the project updates is the Washington resurfacing, but it is in the 2018 work plan. And I know I've mentioned it before, when I looked at the work plan, it's a little bit longer stretch than I originally thought. And so I just want to remind folks that there's school crosswalks there that have been identified as dangerous areas, and this area is slated for potential bicycle boulevard. While we're doing this project, I really urge that we consider both of those things. And then the next thing is maybe just, if you could talk a little bit more or just go away knowing that in May, this is going to come up, the Fuller Road sidewalk extension. I don't know how much time is going to be planned to present that, but I would encourage it to be fairly lengthy because this was very controversial, at least in the circles that I'm familiar with, when the original suggestion that the crosswalk would be moved. So, you know, I think that most of the people on this commission are going to want to see the road safety audit, for instance, background on that, who did it, did we contract out, is this in-house, all those sorts of questions. And I know it's a sidewalk extension, but in reality, it's a crosswalk move. And this is a crosswalk that has a history, a tragic one, that a lot of parents are very passionate about what they'd like to see. Cool. Thanks.
Make sure we build enough time into the agenda for that.
Thanks, Preston.
Yep.
Thank you, Bradley. I also can just comment on that because I will be meeting with the staff that are going to present at next month's meeting about the Fuller Road sidewalk. So I've captured the feedback that you've just shared. If there are other specific requests, I know you're usually good about sending us follow-up, and if you think of further what you're looking for or you're interested in hearing from staff, that will help us prepare so that we can have the right information and be able to answer questions that come up.
Sure, sure.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, so I know the Washtenaw and Pittsfield crosswalk thing, I know that's an MDOT thing, but it's been kind of on the updates with no updates since like more than a year ago. And since that was thought to be this year, I'm wondering, is there anything going on? Did it just get dropped?
Yep. Actually, I'm going to turn and see if Eli bumps me somewhere else, because I think Eli was the last one that we tried to make a reconnection, but can't recall where we're at
And
with
perhaps
detail.
time may have gotten away from me. It might have been a month or so ago that I did reach out to the University Region planner and queried where the status of this crosswalk review is. She had indicated that she had to check back with her people, and I have not heard back from her yet. So I appreciate it coming back up, and I'll ring them up again.
I'll ring them again.
Okay. Any other comments? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Chris.
Yep.
All right, then, we are at the point where we'd like to hear from any of the liaisons. If you have brief reports for us to hear.
Not include me, or is that
That was quiet. All right. Are there any commissioner reports, communications?
I just wanted to point out, we had another fatal crash with a pedestrian this past week on Miller by the Crescent Roads. And that makes 4 in the past 30 days for pedestrians who've been hit. 3 were right downtown, and then this one that was fatal on Miller. And so, you know, the official statistics sometimes paint a rosier picture if they're using a data set that isn't recording every instance, or only every instance the police come, or I don't know where the data come from, but if you multiplied that out, that would be 48 people in 1 year in Ann Arbor, which is double the number for the whole Washtenaw County estimate. So I just want to make sure we stay kind of vigilant about the process, but, you know, everything we've spoken about today certainly points in the right direction.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to mention, I know that the RTA plan is going out for public input, at least that's what I've seen, that it looks like they'll probably be having some kind of public meetings, I mean, in various jurisdictions, including one in Washtenaw County here in Ann Arbor, to discuss their plan. I don't know if this is finalized yet. I saw that it was on their agenda, like the plans, like they were gonna set up these meeting times, and that's on their agenda for tomorrow. So keep your eye out for that. I think it's gonna be in May that they're gonna start soliciting input, and they're already soliciting input via their website, and the plan is up. I know it's a bit different from the 2016 plan, but
next agenda items, if you have anything to add to the suggested agenda that we're working on? Or other future agendas farther up?
I can just speak about what is on the work plan for next month. So we have, currently on the work plan, it shows the transportation plan update. So I'll be working with Eli and we'll see if there is new information beyond what he shared tonight about the RFP process, if we have information ready for an update. Though that item may be something, there may be something brief in May and then it come back a little later once the consultant's on board for more detailed project kickoff is what's identified in the work plan. Ann Arbor Station update, again, is one with Eli that will coordinate and see what new information beyond what's already been provided in the staff update report. Something that was on this month that had shifted down at U of M's request is the connector project. So I'll reach out to Steve Dolan. I haven't been in touch with him yet, but we'll see if that's ready for May. And then we've mentioned already the Fuller Road sidewalk. We are planning to discuss that at next month's meeting. So that's what we have in mind. Of course, we'll take a look ahead and see if we end up short on items, we'll see what we can bring up. But if you have other items you're interested in, then please let us know.
And that next, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add, I thought there might be a presentation from the city on the traffic calming changes.
Yeah, so the traffic calming program, I should have mentioned that. It's also to be determined whether it'll be ready for May or June.
Okay.
But being worked on and just trying to get it completed internally and getting, though it won't be, I won't say completed. We want to bring to the commission what we have been working on so far, looking for feedback that we can then wrap in as we get ready to take something to city council, so.
And what's the target to take the city council date?
The discussions we've had internally is to target this fall. So
Okay.
that way we'll have plenty of time we want to bring something to the commission, have time for conversation and back and forth, make modifications, and then hopefully to council in the fall.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, Kelly.
So please note that that meeting is at a weird time. It will be the 9th of May. And so it's moving up a whole week because of
The
working
conflict.
holidays. So make sure that your calendars reflect that. If there are no objections, then I will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you for